Discover the incredible, transformative stories of 7 Viking wives who overcame unspeakable trials. Clara Johnson's breath hitched as she stood before the old library window, her fingers trembling over the worn pages of a history book. The world around her felt heavy, her exhausted body reminded her of the night shifts she'd just finished, each one pushing her dreams further away. As a nurse, her life revolved around caring for others, while inside, she wrestled with desperation. The bills were stacking up, her son needed new shoes, and dreams of a better life felt increasingly distant. The glimmer of hope flickered weakly. Yet here, in these incredible tales of Viking wives, she found a reflection of her struggles. These women had faced unimaginable trials, betrayals, societal prejudices, and managed to carve out legacies in an unforgiving world. Clara craved that strength, a strength she felt she could never fully grasp. Each page told stories of women who stood up against the odds, and Clara identified with their anger and resolve. But just as the tales filled her with newfound determination, an angry tension twisted in her gut as she thought about the impending conversation with her father, a man who had abandoned her and her mother years ago. How could she even contemplate offering him forgiveness? As nights turned into days, the conflict within became unbearable. Torn between the loyalty she felt towards her mother, who had struggled alone, and the yearning for a relationship she had always longed for, Clara's heart was a battlefield. She met the Viking wives' stories with admiration, yet the gravity of her father's re-entry hung like storm clouds over her spirit. Each discovery about these women made her question her own worth, her identity. She hesitated, her mind racing. Would she ever truly understand the complexities of forgiveness? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The pressure in her chest swelled as she met her father's eyes in her modest living room, a place filled with cherished memories of her mother but now tainted by his presence. He was a stranger, yet there was a flicker of vulnerability in his voice. Clara's stomach churned. The sweetness of potential reconciliation was sullied by the bitterness of past abandonments. She thought of the Viking wives once more, their unwavering determination flaring within her. How could love be this complicated? And why did it evoke such fear in her? Just then, as her father's words began to weave back into her consciousness, the doorbell rang, jolting her from the emotional chaos. A letter arrived from her grandmother's estate, a forgotten legacy stamped with her family history. The return address held a weight she couldn't ignore. Clara's hands trembled as she considered the implications of hidden truths. The threads of her lineage entwined with the Viking tales she had so deeply connected with, all of them forging legacies against adversity. A wave of clarity washed over her as she prepared to reply to her father, the tension coiling tighter, unclear how she would respond to both him and the surprising history unveiled by the letter. What revelations would it hold? Would she forge a new path shaped by her own strength and choose her destiny, or would the past pull her back into a familiar and painful cycle of betrayal? The air tingled with uncertainty, leaving Clara clinging to both hope and outrage, poised on the edge of a decision that would define her future. Clara's heart raced as she carefully unsealed the envelope, her fingers brushing against the thick paper that held the remnants of generations. With each crease she unfolded, she felt her reality teetering on the brink of revelation. The letter seemed to pulse with a life of its own, beckoning her into the depths of her ancestry, urging her to confront the truth she had buried for so long. The first few lines were a simple introduction, a formal acknowledgement of her grandmother's estate, but what lay beneath was the real treasure, a tale of resilience woven through carefully penned words. Names and dates spilled forth, recounting a lineage filled with formidable women whose courage rivaled that of the Viking wives she had come to admire. There was mention of her great-grandmother, a woman who took to her husband's business after he fell ill. Her strength resonated within Clara, igniting a flicker of hope that she might inherit the same tenacity. As she read, pieces of her family's history began to intertwine with her own struggles. Clara found herself questioning the choices her great-grandmother made, how she had navigated a world rife with obstacles. The parallels were uncanny. Just as her ancestor had been thrust into the role of provider, Clara was now burdened with the weight of her family's future. She felt as if a bridge was forming between past and present, revealing a path of potential that had been obscured by her fears and insecurities. The moment was electric. Clara's thoughts rushed like a torrent. Perhaps she could emulate the grit shown by those incredible women, navigating the storm of her father's unpredictable presence with grace and strength. Maybe she could forgive while still holding true to the damage done. The Viking wives had faced worse, they had thrived despite betrayals and loss. Could she do the same? Just as she began to absorb the empowering legacy swirling around her, she heard her father's voice again, muffled yet persistent. It cut through her thoughts like a jagged knife, stilling her moment of connection. The flood of emotions rushed back: fear, anger, confusion. How could she accept him back into her life when the wounds from his abandonment still festered? With an inner battle raging, Clara's gaze shifted back to the letter, searching for answers, echoing the struggles and triumphs of those who had walked before her. The decision is yours. The words hung in the air like a banner, a clarion call to reclaim her voice. Clara grabbed a pen, a spark of defiance igniting within her. She wouldn't just reply to her father, she would write the narrative of her own life, a life shaped by the knowledge that she had the power to change its course. It was time for her to rise from the shackles of her past and claim the strength that both her lineage and the Viking wives had embodied. Yet, even as she began to pen her thoughts, doubt crept in. The stakes felt impossibly high. What if reaching for forgiveness meant losing more than she could handle? What if, in trying to build connections, she only built walls of pain? As she wrestled with her thoughts, the doorbell rang again, this time echoing a sense of finality. Clara's stomach clenched. Was that the harbinger of reconciliation or the start of another painful chapter? Gripping the pen tightly and staring at the unfinished letter, she had to decide: would she let herself step onto the path of healing or retreat back into the shadows of her past? The contract between her heart and mind pulsed relentlessly. Clara inhaled deeply, ready to confront whatever lay beyond that door. She wasn't merely stepping into the unknown, she was reclaiming her narrative. The next moment would shape her journey, one that could either anchor her to the past or set her free. And just as she took a step toward the door, a realization struck her like lightning: this was just the beginning of an intricate dance between forgiveness and self-discovery that she was now destined to navigate. Clara hesitated at the door, the thrum of her heartbeat echoing in her ears. Each second felt stretched, laden with possibilities and unresolved conflicts. The doorbell's ring dug into her chest like a nail, a relentless reminder that choices loomed ahead. She took a breath, steadied herself, and grasped the knob. Just a turn separated her from confronting a man whose presence had imbued her life with chaos and confusion. It was far more than a mere physical boundary, it represented her emotional defenses and the preliminary vestiges of control she had tried to erect over the years. As she swung the door open, uncertainty swirled around her like fog. Her father stood there, further transformed by the passage of time yet unmistakably familiar. The gray hairs peppering his beard and the hollows beneath his eyes spoke of struggles and regrets, his tangible history. While they had their differences, they shared the same bloodline, linking them through a tapestry of shared memories, wounds, and unfulfilled roles. "Clara," he said, his voice low and tentative, as if venturing onto fragile ground. "Dad," she replied, each syllable a weighty anchor. The conversation didn't flow easily, it felt more like two ships passing in a stormy sea. But with each moment stretched taut, Clara felt the spirit of her great-grandmother urging her to navigate through the tempest. "Why now?" she asked, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside. His eyes flickered recognition of the pain he'd caused, remorse perhaps, but it was clouded by his own regret. "I've thought about our past. I want to explain. I've changed." A small voice in her head urged caution, warning of the traps hidden behind appealing words. Yet she couldn't help but wrestle with an underlying desire for closure and perhaps an inkling of reconciliation. She could feel the weight of her lineage pressing down on her, her great-grandmother didn't back down, and neither would she. "I've had a difficult journey too," Clara interjected, the words spilling out. "You weren't in my life when I needed you the most." As those words hung in the air, Clara took a step back, reassessing the broad horizon of possibility. It was one thing to express her hurt, but she had a choice to make: to remain anchored, lost in resentment, or to consider the delicate dance of forgiveness. His silence bore an uncomfortable air as he absorbed her revelation. It wasn't just a conversation, it felt like a turning point in the narrative of both their lives. Clara understood that this was her moment of agency to voice her feelings and reclaim her story. "I can't pretend that it didn't hurt, that your absence didn't fracture my life. But research shows that sometimes mending can happen through communication." Clara hesitated briefly before her mind whirled again with visions of those Viking wives, strong, daring women who fought their way through treachery. Maybe she could pave a similar path, not just for herself, but for her father too. "What if we could try again?" he whispered, almost as if afraid the suggestion would shatter everything around them. Her heart tightened. The gulfs of time and space felt insurmountable. Did she dare venture into the fragile landscape of hope? Could she risk breaching the walls she had built? As she pondered, an inkling of realization struck her once more. By taking this step, she wasn't just entering his world, she was redefining her own narrative, carving out a new arc in her life's story. "Maybe we can start with honesty. Let us be real about our past, but it will require bravery from both of us." A flare of determination shone in her chest. Clara recognized that the path before her was uncertain, yet it had the potential to lead to something extraordinary. Just as she was piecing together her newfound resolve, her phone buzzed unceremoniously, shattering the charged atmosphere. Clara's fingers twitched, and she glanced at the screen. It displayed a message from a local historical society regarding an upcoming event featuring tales reminiscent of her ancestors, the very Viking wives she had sought to emulate. The connection was uncanny. All of this felt intertwined, each revelation melding into the next. This was not just the beginning of a reconnection with her father, it could also be the launchpad for embracing her heritage fully. But what if engaging with her past in such a public way could unearth more than she bargained for? What if attending that event forced her to confront her own vulnerabilities? The air crackled with new challenges as she clutched her phone tighter, caught between the two pivotal moments unfolding before her. Would she strike the balance between old ties and new explorations, or would this prove to be the ultimate test for her hard-won strength? The next steps were no longer just about navigating her relationship with her father, they were about leaning into the larger tapestry of her identity. She learned the stakes were intertwined and raised even higher, forging connections, reclaiming her voice, and stepping boldly into the life she was determined to reshape. Clara stood at the precipice, ready to leap, knowing this was only the beginning of her fight for a more powerful narrative. Clara felt her pulse quicken as her thumb hovered over the screen of her phone. The message from the Historical Society tugged at a deep-seated curiosity, the kind that whispered promises of revelation and connection to her ancestry. It was as if the Viking wives called to her, daring her to uncover the fibers of strength woven into the very fabric of her being. "Clara?" Her father's hesitant voice jolted her back to the moment, and she was struck by the urgency to reconcile not only their relationship but also her own fragmented identity. The ghost of his questions, would he leave again? Would he disappoint her anew? Lingered in the charged silence. "Let us talk," she proposed, exhaling as if releasing years of pent-up emotion. This wasn't merely a conversation, it felt like a partnership forming in the depths of uncertainty. "What does change look like for you?" He hesitated, and she sensed the layers of his self-examination. "I want to be present," he finally answered, sincerity lacing his voice. "I want to understand you. I realize I can't rewrite the past, but you want a part in the future," she interrupted gently, attempting to steer the conversation towards honesty rather than dwelling in regret. The air between them softened, yet it danced with the edges of tension. "Exactly," he replied, relief washing over his features like sunlight after a storm. "I know I can't expect you to forgive me easily. I just want to show you the man I am now." Clara weighed his words, examining them like a historian poring over a fragile artifact. She was accustomed to her independence, her self-reliance born from years of disappointment. Suddenly, here was her father, laying bare his vulnerability before her. Trust is built over time, not in a single moment, Clara cautioned, her resolve firm yet kind. If we're going to do this, we both have to work towards something real. He nodded, eyes glistening with gratitude, and Clara felt a flicker of hope ignite within her. Their fractured history wasn't forgotten, but it no longer dictated her future. Taking a step into uncharted territory, she considered the historical society event looming ahead. I received a message about a gathering focused on Viking women, she revealed, watching his reaction intently. It's a chance for me to learn more about my heritage. His brows furrowed, and she could see the gears turning in his mind. Will you go? I think I need to, Clara offered, buoyed by a newfound assertiveness. It represented a bridge to her past and perhaps a path toward understanding herself better. They overcame the odds. Their stories resonate with the fight I've been through as well. Then you should go, he said, admiration mingling with something deeper fear. His approval felt foreign yet illuminating, signifying a shift in their relationship that had long been overdue. Clara felt a mixture of gratitude and trepidation. Embracing this connection with her ancestral legacy would demand confronting parts of herself she had tried to keep at bay, parts laden with vulnerability and aching truths. Just promise me one thing, she added, her voice firm. As I dive into this new chapter, you'll be honest with me about everything. No more pretending. I promise, he said, his gaze steady. I'll face the ghosts of my past just like you'll confront yours. The future stretched ahead, laden with uncertainty yet shimmering with possibility. Clara gathered the momentum building within her, fortifying her resolve to engage with not only her father but the heritage that inspired her. As the weight of her lineage beckoned her toward exploration, both internal and external, Clara knew she was on the brink of transformation, but would she find empowerment in the pursuit of her cultural identity, or would it unearth turmoil she hadn't anticipated? Hesitation gripped her as she continued to weigh the implications of embracing this deeper connection to herself and her story. Would the Viking wives provide the guiding light she sought or the darker truths she had to face? Her phone buzzed again, pulling her back from contemplation. Another message, another possibility. This was only the beginning. Clara stood at the edge of a precipice, heart racing, ready to leap into a journey of self-discovery and reclamation. As she glanced toward her father, determination flared in her chest. The first step had been taken. But what awaited her on the other side of this exploration? Was it redemption or revelation? Clara leaned against the cool stone wall of her apartment, the weight of her father's promise echoing in her thoughts. Standing at the intersection of her past and future, she granted herself a moment of stillness, allowing the silence to wash over her like a comforting blanket. Yet, the upcoming meeting with the Historical Society felt like a storm brewing on the horizon. She felt a compulsion to prepare, to delve deep into the stories of the Viking wives who had shaped untold destinies against all odds. Her curiosity was igniting into a heat almost palpable, but she found herself torn between excitement and fear. What if she unearthed truths that shattered the picture she held of her ancestors? What if they weren't the heroines she imagined, but flawed, complex individuals who struggled in their own right? As she navigated her swirling thoughts, Clara reached for her laptop and fired it up. The glow of the screen illuminated her resolve. Each click of the keyboard reverberated like a drumbeat, pushing her forward into a domain that promised self-discovery. She began researching Viking women warriors, traders, and leaders whose legacies could inspire her own narrative. With each story she uncovered, Clara found herself grappling with her own identity. These women had fought for their places in worlds that underestimated them, challenging conventions with fierce tenacity. They had wielded swords and shielded their families against invasions. Clara couldn't help but draw parallels between their struggles and her own battles against doubt and disappointment. After hours of searching, she stumbled upon a story that struck a chord within her: a woman named Lagertha, renowned for her prowess in battle. Clara couldn't help but admire Lagertha's courage, she was not merely a shadow of a man's legacy but a force that commanded respect. Since childhood, Clara had viewed her own life as dictated by external expectations, afraid to step beyond the prescribed boundaries of tradition. But here was proof that she could rewrite her narrative. Suddenly, her phone vibrated again, breaking her concentration. It was a message from the Historical Society. They had sent an agenda for the upcoming meeting, which included a request for attendees to share a personal connection to the themes of the gathering. The invitation struck her, a challenge wrapped in camaraderie. Feeling a mix of dread and anticipation, Clara acknowledged the demand that awaited her. Could she pull together the strands of her life experiences and articulate them in such a way that they would resonate with others? Or was she too dormant, too uninspired to rise to the occasion? She closed her eyes for a moment, her mind drifting back to her father and their recent conversation. The hope she had felt, however fleeting, ignited within her again. The prospect of sharing her journey also felt terrifying. It would expose the chinks in her armor, the insecurities she often tucked away. But maybe vulnerability was the key, not just to connect with her father but to open the door to shared experiences among peers at the society gathering. They were all engaged in the scavenger hunt of identity, and perhaps she could forge a connection in this unfamiliar territory. Taking a deep breath, Clara started drafting her thoughts, her fingers gliding over the keyboard. She hesitated, questioned her abilities, but pressed on, resolved to invest herself fully into this newfound journey. She wanted to give voice to her truth while embracing the complexities that came along with it, yet, beneath the surface, doubt lurked, whispering that this moment, too, could end in disappointment. As she continued to pour her thoughts onto the page, a sudden realization pierced through the fog of uncertainty. The power she sought from her ancestry lay not in an idealized past but in the authenticity of struggle and perseverance. It was precisely through these imperfections that she could find strength not only for herself but for every woman who had ever felt devalued. Clara paused and read her words. They felt raw and powerful, a declaration of intent. She was ready to confront her inheritance of strength and vulnerability head-on. But as she saved the document, a knot tightened in her stomach. What if her father's truth would resurface at the meeting, challenging the fragile bridge they were building? Would the revelations unveiled there pull them apart, or would they draw them closer? No longer able to ignore the anxiety swirling within her, she knew she had reached a crossroads. There was no turning back now, only the uncertain path ahead beckoned her forward. As she closed her laptop, Clara felt a jolt of fear and excitement. She had taken a pivotal step toward her past, but what would the confrontation with history reveal? The days leading up to the meeting loomed large for Clara, each sunrise punctuating her spiraling anxiety. The echoes of her previous research danced in her mind, their lessons both empowering and daunting. Each morning, as she sipped her coffee, she pondered the stories of the Viking women she had unearthed. They had wielded axes to carve their destinies, and now she felt a pressing need to do the same. Yet, as excitement built, so too did the weight of her unresolved questions. Would sharing her voice set her free, or would it tear at the already fraying fabric of her relationship with her father? The dual nature of vulnerability, its power to connect, as well as to expose, gnawed at her every waking moment. That in search of clarity, Clara decided to visit the Historical Society earlier than her scheduled meeting. She hoped to absorb the environment, gravitate towards the artifacts that could ground her within her ancestry. Upon entering the dimly lit space, the walls adorned with relics and maps stirred both dread and curiosity. Here lay the essence of stories untold, waiting to be embraced. She wandered through the exhibits, her fingers grazing the edges of ancient artifacts, jewelry shimmering with a history that seemed to echo. It sparked an unexpected courage within her. Clara stopped at a display featuring replicas of Viking ships, their craftsmanship resonating like a heartbeat. It reminded her of her journey, a vessel that could either remain tethered to the shore or set out into uncharted waters. In that moment of reflection, she caught the eye of an older woman, a fellow researcher in the society, who stood nearby. The woman introduced herself as Beatrice, historian with a passion for women's narratives throughout history. "It's brave, what you're doing," Beatrice said softly, sensing Clara's hesitance. Many people overlook the strength of women in these tales. Clara felt both seen and anxious under Beatrice's gaze. "I'm not sure how to articulate my story yet," she confessed, her voice wavering. "What if it's not enough?" Beatrice smiled knowingly, acknowledging the fear she sensed in Clara. "It doesn't have to be perfect. Authenticity resonates, and the power lies in your truth. Remember, the road to understanding often comes through our struggles." Her words ignited something within Clara. Perhaps the path of authenticity was not about the polished presentation of her ancestry but rather the rawness of her experience. Overwhelmed yet inspired, Clara wandered deeper into the society's halls, her pulse quickening as she embraced both the thrill of discovery and the weight of expectations her father's promise still echoing, growing more palpable. She took her seat at a table alongside other members, their conversations reverberating with familiarity. As she listened to their shared passions for history, their struggles, and successes, she realized her voice held worth in this room. With her heart racing, Clara prepared to share her reflections on Lagertha, her bit of vulnerability glimmering against the backdrop of collective stories. She began to speak, each syllable resonating with the shared struggles that bound them together, and for the first time, she felt capable of transforming her doubts into strength. Yet, as Clara settled into the strength of her newfound voice, a familiar face entered the room, casting a shadow over her confidence. It was her father. His presence ignited a renewed wave of anxiety that threatened to undo the progress she had made. Suddenly, the journey of self-discovery felt daunting again. Would this encounter redefine her narrative or unravel the delicate thread she had begun to weave? As Clara's thoughts spiraled, she braced herself, knowing that the moment of confrontation had arrived. The weight of their past hung heavily in the air, demanding to be addressed. Clara took a deep breath, preparing not only for the words she would share but for the dialogue that was about to unfold. She steeled herself to face not only her father but the unspoken truths they had both carried for far too long. Clara's heart raced as she locked eyes with her father for the first time in years. His presence cast an unexpected chill, one that crept beneath the layer of her newfound bravery. Hunched shoulders and clenched fists formed her natural response to the tension roiling in the air. She'd come here to find her voice, to weave her narrative into the tapestry of history, yet the specter of their shared past loomed larger than any Viking tale she could recount. That he seemed ancient, weary from the burdens of their history, yet there was a flicker of recognition in his gaze, an acknowledgement of the years lost. The silence is too loud to ignore. Clara felt a mix of anger and longing rise within her. She wanted to confront him, to demand accountability for the silence that had snuffed out so many moments of connection. But more than that, she wanted to be heard. As the other members of the society looked on, she realized they were now witnesses to a potential unraveling. Would it amplify her voice or drown it out altogether? She tightened her grip around a chair to ground herself and inhaled deeply, tethering her resolve to the Viking women whose stories she revered. "Dad," she started, her voice trembling. "I didn't expect to see you here today." The hem of her words quivered, revealing vulnerability she had not planned to share. "I came to see what you were working on," he replied, his tone softer than she had anticipated. "I wanted to support you." His admission, a morsel of sincerity, gave Clara pause. Support had always been a foreign concept between them, replaced by critical words and dismissive actions. Perhaps there was hope amidst the turmoil she had grown accustomed to, but her skepticism was hard-earned. "Support?" she echoed, her voice tinged with disbelief. "Then why did you never seem to care about my interests? When I needed you to be present, you weren't." Each word was a tiny axe, chiseling away at the hard shell of resentment she had constructed over the years. His gaze dropped, but she pressed on, thrusting her voice forward with an intensity that surprised her. "I'm trying to embrace my path, to acknowledge the stories of brave women, like the Viking wives who fought for their place. Yet, here you are, standing between me and that journey. I can't be hampered by the weight of our past anymore." Surprised murmurs rippled through the room, but Clara's focus sharpened. The backdrop of Viking lore felt alive, flickering with her own ambitions, and she fed off its energy. The courage of those women resonated deep within her, it was time to carve a new narrative. His features hardened, but behind the steely exterior, Clara detected hesitation. "I didn't realize maybe that's the problem," she interrupted, allowing anger to punctuate her resolve. "You didn't think. You chose to ignore parts of my life when it mattered." This time, he took a step closer, his face a mix of sorrow and determination. "I know I've failed you, Clara. I want to understand. That's why I'm here." In that moment of dawning comprehension, Clara sensed a shift, something faintly hopeful amidst all the turmoil. Maybe their confrontation wouldn't end in chaos but rather lead to a deeper understanding. Yet doubt lingered in her mind. Was it possible for the past to reshape their future? Caught between the pain of previous wounds and a flicker of possibility, Clara felt a surge of energy and resolve. This confrontation could be the catalyst she needed, one that might not only redefine her relationship with her father but also reinforce her commitment to her own journey. But as she prepared to respond, her thoughts clashed. Would she let the possibility of reconciliation overshadow her voice, the very essence of her rediscovery? And then, just as she was ready to forge ahead, another wave of doubt washed over her. What if her father's intentions were merely an illusion? This fragile thread of hope was poised on the brink of collapse. The moment hung suspended. Clara braced herself for the uncertain dialogue ahead, aware that each word could either build a bridge or construct another wall. As she eyed her father's searching look, she knew the next sentence would determine the path forward for both of them. Was she ready to redefine their narrative together? Clara's breath caught in her throat, the weight of the moment pressing down like a heavy fog. As she looked into her father's eyes, she recognized that the question now was less about blame and more about allowing a new narrative to unfold. The power of that realization ignited a fire within her. "I want to believe you," she began, steadying her voice but allowing vulnerability to seep through. "For years, I thought I needed to prove myself to you when all I've wanted is for you to see me." She paused to gather her thoughts while her father's expression softened, a slight break in the armor he had constructed over years of silence. "Seeing you isn't enough," hers words flowed like an untamed river, rushing forward with a conviction she'd kept at bay for too long. "I need to feel understood, to know that my work, my passion for these stories holds value to you. When I share the strength of the Viking women, I'm also sharing my strength. This is my identity, my truth." The room had grown impossibly quiet. Clara felt the eyes of the society members on her, their collective curiosity and concern amplifying the tension. She wondered if they felt it too, that delicate balance between past grievances and present opportunities. "I know I haven't been there, Clara," he admitted, and the humility embedded in his tone was unexpected. "I chose my own fears over the needs of my family." "Then let's change that," Clara urged, each word infused with her determination. "But you must understand this isn't just about the legacy you're trying to connect with. This is about who I am becoming." His brow furrowed as if wrestling with inner demons. "I've always attempted to do what is right by you, but maybe I've got it all wrong." The confession felt monumental, a shift in power dynamics that Clara hadn't anticipated. She recognized an opening. Not understanding is just one side of the story. If you genuinely want to support me, I have to know you're committed. It means stepping outside of your comfort zone to truly engage with my journey. And that was it, clarity in the chaos. Clara envisioned her father exploring these narratives side by side with her, listening to the stories of those Viking wives and allowing them not only to cross centuries but to weave into their shared history. Step by step, word by word, they could forge a path where past silence met the present's potential. "What do I need to do?" he asked, his voice a mixture of uncertainty and eagerness. "Let's talk," she suggested, knowing that words had become their most powerful tool. "Let's dive deep into these stories, together. It will take time, but we can build something new, brick by brick." As clarity brimmed between them, Clara felt her past slips away, slow but liberating. All those years of resentment were not lost, they could serve as lessons, guiding their approach forward rather than anchoring them in a stagnant history. In that moment, she caught a glimpse of who she might become, freed from the weight of her father's expectations. This was a pivotal moment that underscored her personal growth. No longer would she seek validation, she would find strength in the act of creation and sharing. No longer would she suppress her voice, it would resonate beyond their shared past into new territories of understanding and compassion. Yet, even as hope dawned, doubt lingered like an unwanted shadow in the corner of her mind. Could her father truly change after all these years? Was she opening herself up to another potential hurt? The thought crystallized as she watched him, how he struggled between remorse and a fledgling desire for connection. The next step felt monumental, pivotal enough to bridge a vast chasm of misunderstandings. Clara steeled herself for whatever revelations might come next. "Ready for the Viking tales?" she asked, summoning a tentative smile, an invitation and a challenge. As he met her gaze, the unspoken possibilities loomed large. Each decision they made from here could shape their histories, and Clara couldn't shake the feeling that they stood on the edge of a significant transformation, together, but the lingering question pricked at her mind: what would it take to turn their efforts into lasting change? The answer whisked away the lightness of the moment, leaving Clara contemplating the complexities of this newfound connection and whether it could endure real tests. Clara shifted in her seat, the anticipation of a new chapter in her relationship with her father flooding her system with both anxiety and excitement. Unfurling scrolls of parchment, she prepared to share the tales that had become her sanctuary, the stories of Viking women whose resilience seemed to echo across centuries. With every word she spoke, she was digging deeper into her own identity, intertwining it with the powerful legacy she hoped to create with her father. "Let us begin with Lagertha," she started, her voice steadying as she recounted the tale of the legendary Shield Maiden. As she described her strength and strategic prowess, she felt the pull of her narrative enveloping them. She watched her father keenly, searching for signs of engagement or indifference as she delved into the depths of Lagertha's battles. "What do you see in her story?" she probed, curious about his perspective. Her father leaned back, his expression contemplative. "She fought against all odds," he replied slowly, a hint of admiration threading through his tone. "But I wonder, did she ever feel truly accepted by her peers?" The question struck Clara like a bolt of lightning. "Acceptance is complicated," she noted, her mind racing with implications. "I think it's not only about what others see in us but what we choose to embrace in ourselves. Isn't that a connection worth exploring?" This was new terrain for both of them. Clara could see his willingness to unpack feelings he had buried under layers of his own expectations. It was refreshing yet terrifying. She was treading along a road lined with the potential for both newfound intimacy and the risk of revealing old wounds. As they spoke of the powerful choices that defined these women, Clara recognized the narrative threads that connected their lives to her own. She had come to realize that her skipped opportunities and moments of self-doubt were universes apart from the courageous actions of her Viking heroines. She was not merely revisiting ancient stories but linking them to a personal saga, one that demanded her full engagement in the present, not just as a seeker of validation but as a creator of her own narrative. Suddenly, her father's voice cut through her thoughts. "Do you think they ever felt despair?" he queried, eyes narrowed as if searching for an answer. The question lingered, prompting Clara to contemplate her character's complexities. "Absolutely," she replied, her vulnerability on display. "Despair can fuel strength if you let it. They had to dig deep within themselves, just as we do. They made choices and lived with the consequences, good or bad." His expression shifted to one of realization, a mirror to her own struggles with embracing her decisions. There was a profound shift in their exchange. They were no longer on opposing ends of a generational divide but rather explorers navigating the same internal landscapes. As they wrapped up the session on Lagertha, Clara felt an unexpected heaviness settle over their conversation. What if the stories we discuss inspire new revelations? She wondered aloud, challenging both of them. Her father's hand moved as if reaching for the invisible weight of that challenge. "Revelations can lead to painful truths, Clara. It's frightening to confront your own shortcomings." A wave of tension rippled between them, igniting a deeper understanding of the fears that had long steered their relationship into shallow waters. Clara recognized that change required more than just acknowledgement, it demanded courage, not just from her but from him as well. What happens when buried truths come to light? She pressed, her heart racing as she prepared for the possibility of resistance. Are you willing to face what has overshadowed our past? He paused, trapping the air between them in suspense. Clara could sense the hesitation coiling around him, a struggle between the desire for connection and the fear of exposure. Maybe, he said, voice barely above a whisper. Maybe it's time. The gravity of those words sank in. Clara felt the whirlwind of emotions within her, the unsettling mix of fear and hope as a new layer to their exploration unfolded. It was a leap of faith they were both willing to take, but as they prepared to dive deeper into the next tale, a new question loomed ominously in Clara's mind: what exactly lay beneath the surface of her father's past? What hidden stories waited to be revealed, and would they bring closure or further complexities to their relationship? The anticipation of discovery charged the air between them, making every heartbeat feel heavy with impending truths. Clara stared at her father, the weight of their previous exchanges brimming with potential for transformation. She had crossed a threshold, the courage she had gleaned from the Viking wives pulsating through her veins. It was evident that their trajectory was turning. A moment of clear recognition dawned between them, opening a doorway to a new chapter that could redefine their relationship. Next, let us talk about Fridays, Clara said, invoking the memory of the daring Viking woman. She exemplifies fierce independence and unyielding bravery. Faced with monumental challenges, she captured the essence of defiance, a fierce protector who carved her path despite insurmountable odds. Her father leaned in, intrigue flickering in his eyes. Tell me more. What resonates in her story that connects to yours? Clara paused, deeply conscious of the significance of her words. Fridays didn't wait for permission or validation. She made choices, often defying societal expectations. There's a raw power in that, to claim your voice, to stake your claim on who you intend to become. With each sentence, Clara felt as if she was pulling her father into the depths of her understanding, allowing the stories to illuminate not only their respective journeys but also the emotional crevices they had both inhabited for far too long. Her father's expression shifted, the emotions playing across his features as he began to reflect. Like Fridays, I think I've been fearful of my own choices, convinced that I must remain within a certain mold of who a father should be. Maybe I've fallen into the trap of expectations instead of exploring why I'm here in the first place. Clara's heart leaped. What if being a father means embracing the messiness of that identity? What if it's being open to new narratives that progress both of us? The ambience of comprehension settled warmly between them, illuminating the potential for forging connections not just through shared history but through authentic acknowledgement of their individual pursuits. For the first time, Clara felt an unmistakable pulse of understanding that breached the intersection where disappointment had once thrived. As they engaged in conversation, discussing the nuances of various Viking figures, perplexing patterns began to emerge about her father, a man of untold stories who had lived in the shadows of his own insecurities, much like her. They found rhythm in their exchanges, fostering a sense of camaraderie they had both long abandoned. Clara was no longer a daughter wrestling with resentment, she was a navigator alongside her father, drawing parallels between their lives and the legacies of those warrior women, yet, deep-seated apprehension still whispered in the corners of her mind. Could their understanding withstand the scrutiny of raw truths yet to be revealed? She had learned that unveiling vulnerability came with its own risks. As we peel back these layers, it only deepens our responsibility, Clara noted, voice steady yet tremulous with anticipation. The weight of understanding could lead to deeper wounds or transformative healing. Her father nodded solemnly, eyes rich with understanding. I've spent years avoiding what needed to be addressed. Perhaps there's a way forward through the stories we face together, where my failures and your strength coexist. Emboldened by the foundation they were building, Clara seized that moment. I think true growth means accepting the complexities our relationship won't disappear overnight. But each honest conversation will guide us through the murky waters into a clearer shore. In that moment, Clara recognized her own growth emanating like a beacon. This was not just about her father approaching her with newfound interest but also about her establishing her own narrative, confident and unwavering. She was defining her worth and embracing her right to author her own destiny. Nodding, he seemed to absorb the swirl of emotions and contemplations Clara shared. It's ironic how I thought I was being protective, yet all along, I was limiting you. It's time to dismantle these walls, not just for me but for you. With every exchange, Clara felt layers of doubt unfurling, the urgent need for personal acceptance strengthening her resolve while inviting her father to tread this uncharted territory alongside her. Our shared path doesn't erase what has happened, Clara clarified, her heart swelling with a mix of resolve and empathy. But if we carve it anew, it's within our control how we navigate this threshold. As their discussions led them deeper into the essence of both their narratives, there was a marked shift that Clara felt in her body and spirit. She had ventured into the wilderness of her past, and instead of avoiding it, she had reclaimed it, transmuting the pain into pieces of growth. The stories of the Viking women provided a lens, a refracted view of resilience and hope that ignited something unimaginable within her, a sense of closure and promise. It dawned on her, through this very act of storytelling, she had anchored her identity within her lineage, allowing the legacies of courage to propel her forward. Even as the conversation ebbed and flowed, a certainty settled within her. They were stepping out of the past's shadow, venturing toward an illuminated future tied together by understanding. Clara had discovered undeniable strength amid vulnerability, and that strength would no longer merely breathe life into an unacknowledged past, it would fuel her path forward. Enlightened by newfound resolve and connection, she knew they were both in a process of transformation as they committed to weave their lives into a narrative of shared growth. The journey ahead brimmed with potential. Clara felt a trilogy unifying her heart and her father's, a blend of ancestral wisdom and contemporary reclamation. Empowered by her right to narrate her own saga, she gripped the reins of her future. Each story shared would inspire further exploration, cementing their evolving journey and the transformation within her. Now was the time. The door they had opened would not close. Clara embraced this moment of powerful resolution. With unwavering confidence and a sense of agency she had never before possessed, she lifted her chin and took a bold step into authenticity. She would share her truth, no longer seeking the validation withheld by their past. Clara Johnson was ready to take ownership of her story with strength and pride. As Clara stood amidst the historical societies gathering with her father by her side, she couldn't help but feel the electricity of change binding them together. She was no longer caught in the shadow of doubt, but lit by a flame of courage they had both ignited. This was just the beginning, and the future shimmered like the dawn breaking over the horizon, teeming with transformative possibilities. Don't wait even one more second. You need to subscribe now to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that will captivate your heart and mind. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, letting your appreciation bloom. Comment your reactions and theories about this incredible journey, and share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion of strength and resilience. You must stand with us as true fans of personal overcoming stories and help amplify these transformative narratives.